welcome to A Feminine Moment. I'm Cherry Lynn, and I'm here with Dixie Andelin Forsyth, daughter of Helen B. Andelin, the author who started it all with Fascinating Womanhood. And Dixie and I are here today to talk to you about a rather sensitive subject. We're going to talk a little bit about infidelity and cheating. So, Dixie, we've had a lot of comments on our private Facebook group from women asking about what to do in their relationship when there has been a case of cheating from their spouse.
Yeah, this is unfortunately too common of a question because it is an issue for some women, and it's incredibly painful because cheating in marriage is never okay, and it destroys relationships. The question is, people are different. And in my life, I've experienced that some women can get past it and forgive, and some really just can't. They try, they want to, but they can't. So it depends on the individual person, and also whether they believe that their husband is not going to do it again. Because serial cheating is just destroys our relationships. And there's been Bob will join us in a minute as soon as he can, but he knows the statistics on if your spouse cheats on you so many times, after that, statistically, marriages just don't last. It's 2 to 3. You just signal me from a distance.
Yeah.
two to three times, and okay. So, but forgiving somebody is always the issue. Now, I think it's important to define forgiveness, because you just assume that everyone knows what that means. And, you always hear forgive and forget, but some things you can't really forget, and some things you shouldn't forget. Like if someone kidnaps your child, you're not going to be inviting them over to dinner anytime soon, even if they've served their prison sentence. You're not going to trust them again, in other words, is what I'm saying. But forgiveness to me means that you no longer seek or hope for anything bad to happen to that person. You're not seeking for revenge or wishing their car would go off a cliff or something like that. You no longer wish bad for them. You no longer seek for justice, and you can actually move on. So if you are unable to do that, then it doesn't mean that you're a terrible person, because we're all different, and some women just can't seem to get beyond the there he is. Good.
Hi. Welcome.
Morning.
We're on a little weekend getaway in St. Louis. So
That sounds fun.
yeah. So did you hear any of our discussion about cheating?
Yeah, I guess what I see is people, there's different ways to live, and one is to be willing to enter into a relationship with somebody, and over time build something together that's meaningful and that is going to be good for both of you. And what I see sometimes is people, unfortunately, especially men, that are more interested in pleasure than responsibility, and they're willing to take momentary pleasure and, in a sense, forget the responsibility part, which really is the important part, because together, I think pleasure and responsibility together are wonderful. But when you try to separate the two and you're just going for the pleasure, life ends up being pretty empty, because you can't quite always get enough pleasure, or you're constantly chasing more and more and more, and you're left with an empty feeling. Mainly because, well, it has to do with, at least in part, brain chemistry, and you're more what we call downstairs. I know in the book you talk about
Timeless.
In your Timeless book you talk about this a little bit and what's actually going on here.
But now when it comes to Fascinating Womanhood, we've had so many success stories with women whose husbands, there's one in particular I'm thinking of, her husband was cheating on her for years, and she had no idea. He had this mistress, I think it was 5 years. They were separated, and she so desperately did not want to lose her marriage And she started applying these principles, and she gradually won her husband back. It was really kind of dramatic. But this woman clearly was willing to forgive her husband if she could just get that relationship back.
Didn't the woman actually come to the hospital?
Yeah, I know.
She confronted her and said, "I'm having an affair with your husband."
When she was in the hospital, it was
Yeah.
so terrible. And I was reading it and I thought, how did she get past this? But she really loved this man, and really, and also she was humble enough to realize her own mistakes in his turning to someone else. It's not like it was okay or it was her fault or anything, but she recognized what the mistakes that she made that caused him to kind of give up on the relationship. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can't control everything. We always say in Fascinating Womanhood, the only person you can control is yourself. Mm-hmm. Nobody else you can. And if your husband is, like somebody wrote in, if your husband has a wandering eye, you can look to yourself, is there anything I'm doing or not doing? But it may be that he's just not a faithful guy. And we can't know that because every individual case is different. Mm-hmm. So, but sometimes it isn't. And so each of us as women have to look to ourselves. Are we trying to live these principles the best way we can, considering that nobody's perfect or going to be?
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this. I had a question the other day from one of our members that was basically, to make a long story short, she had infidelity in her marriage long ago, 15, 20 years ago in her marriage. And her husband basically kind of buried it, I guess, is the best way to say it. And they've just kind of moved on and not really ever talked about it. And I don't think there's a lot of forgiveness there. What kind of advice would you have for someone like that that's trying to say, okay, well, maybe I haven't gotten over this, and maybe this is why my marriage isn't great right now? And how do you sort of open that box?
Well, in some cases, you might need to get counseling if you cannot figure out a way to talk together.
Right.
Would you agree with that? And sometimes not. But sometimes I've met women who said, well, I'm afraid if I admire him or say positive things about him, he'll think I'm being like his mistress was. Mm-hmm. To which that's interesting because
it's part of why he was interested in the mistress. Because she validated him, or maybe made him feel important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. That if she was doing something that validated,
using FW on him.
If she was using it, why not? There's no reason like you could say then I can't ever use it because then I'll be like her. Yeah, you should be the primary one to be using it, and just make sure your admiration and making him number one and everything is all sincere, coming from a place of reality and not manipulation, because it won't work. It just won't work. People can sense it even if they don't know consciously what you're doing.
It's going to come from your heart.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about the women that kind of are having a really hard time moving on and letting go or forgiving, as you say?
That is hard. It is really hard for some women to forgive. And they can ask themselves, do I want to be married to this man? Do I want him?
Yeah.
And if they can answer yes, then work on yourself on forgiving, because forgiving is something that you can do. You can say, well, I want him, and he's never going to pay enough penance in his life to pay for it. As far as making things even, you have to be able to at some point move on and allow him to as well. Mm-hmm. And if you can't, you may have to end it.
Holding a resentment, I think, in a way is more damaging to you than it is to anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes you can hold on to things, and so you really have to look at yourself. Am I holding on and re-feeling? Because resentment actually comes from the root word to re-feel, re-sentir. It's re-feeling something that you're actually doing that. So in a way, you're adding the fuel to keep this fire burning.
So you're looping that memory?
You're looping it. Yeah, you got to loop that's keeping it going, and you keep feeling that, and the injustice of it, and the victim position of it, and the self-pity. It's a tough place to be, and I think a person has to take a real serious look at themselves and say, do I want to keep this going? Can I find some way to forgive and move on? If, especially, I mean, here's a man that sounds like has truly moved on as well. He's made a mistake and he wants to build something better. And, if you can find that, I mean, you have every right to stay upset if you want to, but you don't have to.
Well, and you won't be happy,
right,
if you do. So,
yeah, it sounds like one of the biggest takeaways from this conversation that I'm hearing is that it's absolutely repairable, which is really great to hear, because I think a lot of our ladies that are asking these questions do want that resolution, and they're worried that it's not something that they can fix. So it's great to hear that they can repair it. And then the second thing that stands out to me is, do you want to stay married to him? Yes or no? You know that in your heart. Do you want to stay in this relationship or not? You have a chance here to turn things around. So those are two really valuable pieces of advice, I think.
And for the person who's trying to do that, focusing on your own issues, femininity, particularly understanding men, sympathetic understanding, because if you have his heart, if you truly have his heart, he's not going to stray.
Right.
So, because he won't want to lose you.
Yeah. And this too could be a great situation for someone to turn to a teacher, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You can read the books, and we're soon going to have a series of recorded classes that I'm doing, and you can buy the home study course, where it's the book, workbook, and the classes, but with a teacher on video, which is great. But if you can have a teacher that you can talk to, now they're not counselors, they're not therapists or anything like that, but that you can actually ask questions like, what do you mean by this? And they can answer it. It's so helpful. We've had so many women that have they've read the book, which is great, but they really get a lot out of the class. And especially associating with other women, they feel more like they're not alone.
Right.
Their issues. So,
absolutely.
because you're not. There's billions of us.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for all of your wonderful advice today. It's been so nice talking with you. And for those of you out there that do want to look into the book and the workbook, we are available on Amazon, and you can also join our official Fascinating Womanhood Facebook page to find out more. And that's all the time we have today. Thank you again so much. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like what you're seeing, as well as like and comment below. We love your questions. And I guess we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.